Hello, tribe, neuro hackers and you neuro seekers. I'm so excited that you have decided to join me today, tonight, or wherever you are in the world. We have been diving into the 60-day challenge of detoxing our brains, and we went through why it's important for brain health for our children to detox our brains. And then I briefly went through the 3 brains that we're going to detox. And then after that, we discussed neurogenesis and what that means and how to harness it. So today is dovetailing off neurogenesis, but it's really coming to the fact of why and how. How being, I'm always up for learning. I call myself the eternal student, but it always has to have a practical implication. Gaining knowledge for the sake of gaining knowledge really doesn't help me. I need to know how to employ it. And you, as the parents and teachers of your beautiful genii children, are going to learn exactly that today. All right, so let's get cracking. So what I wanted to speak from is the title of the critical periods in brain development. As you probably know, if you've watched my previous videos, I always give the disclaimer that, this area of neuroscience, particularly amongst the children, is super cutting edge. And so who knows, in a week, this could be old information. But for now, I'm giving you the most up-to-date information. And I'm going to try and give it in the most digestible format for you. So why are we looking into this? Well, it kind of relates to why I have been able to brag so heavily about my students and children. And that is just because I've taken one fact and broken it down and used it to my advantage. And that fact is that the most brain growth happens from utero to the age of 7, generally speaking. But again, if your child is nonverbal, that can go all the way up to age 9, like Einstein. So don't get worried about what culture is telling you. Those are the facts, neurologically speaking. And so all I've done is harness those facts. And how have I done it? I've just done it through the research of the developmental milestones that children generally go through and how to harness that for brain development. Right, sounds simple. So let's just start understanding the critical periods now are essential for brain growth. And when you start understanding when the critical periods are going to happen, that's when you start, hitting them with the stimuli, the visual stimuli, the auditory stimuli, believe it or not, the emotional stimuli, the environmental stimuli. And this is why we're going to go into the parts of detoxing, because that really will set the stage for you if you can do that before the developmental milestones are hit. Okay, so how do we gain this highly informative neuroplasticity stage? And there are ways for you to recognize this. Unfortunately, your first child is normally your guinea pig, especially for me in this area that was totally untouched like 20 years ago. So what you will start noticing is a heightened sensitivity. Not only a heightened sensitivity in the child, like to emotional stimuli, visual, auditory stimuli, they will be sleeping a lot. And that's because they are processing whatever rapid development is taking place physically in their brain, emotionally, and neurologically. The sad thing about this is that it occurs over a limited time period. So I'm showing you the one end of the spectrum where I'm saying, take this, harness it, and make sure that you use it to your best ability. However, on the other side, if you don't harness it, then your child can, just be a normal child. But on the negative side, if there is emotional detachment from the caregiver, if there's, anything from poverty, trauma, abuse, that poor child is not going to be able to experience what we are giving our children. And so often you hear me say, this is a neurological insurance. I believe my program is absolutely that, at a bare minimum, just neurological insurance, because it will make sure that you know when the developmental growth spurts are coming and when to harness it for the brain, how to harness it, and for how long. So I think that's enough of an introduction about the critical learning periods for the child, and we can just jump in now. I want you to know that vision is a very important one. And obviously, I've spoken to you. I don't just do a photographic memory course, I also do a speed reading course and a quantum math course for ages 0 to 9. But there is also coming, which all of you pregnant ladies are going to be very excited to hear, that there is an in utero one that I did with my kids that I can do with you online or in person. But for now, let's just go back to the vision. The vision is really important because they have to be out of utero for that. But again, when you get onto the online course, we'll go into more depth about how, 0 to 3, they're still seeing black. 0 to 3 months or 0 to 6 months, they're still seeing black and white, and how you harness that, and then how you introduce the colors and how you spur them on. I mean, really, you've heard me talk about my trademark quantum intelligence technology, that you are the quantum intelligence technology. You have that quantum intelligence inside of you, and so does your child. And so in order to have that quantum ability to almost foresee what is going to come, we take all the neuroscience and then apply it beforehand to the child, so that any advantage that we can give them in this growth pattern is harnessed. So that is the vision. There's also language acquisition. If you're new to this, you probably haven't heard the story, but I will just repeat it for those of you who have, that with my children, every 6 months, I used to change language teachers with them to a different language with the person who was naturally, it was their mother tongue, teaching my children. And that is because up until the age of 7, again, the child, if learning a language, can actually absorb, like the sponges they are, can absorb that accent as well. And yeah, I'm proud to say I've seen my children, we love to travel, and then I've seen them use just a few words here and there in the different countries, and people think they are locals. So those are the things that you can look to. And we did touch on social bonding, but that is really so important for the critical growth periods, because if there is, I hate dealing with the negative, but if the social interaction is not happening at best, and then at worst, if there's trauma, PTSD, stress, anxiety, any of those things, they all affect the brain development of a child. But for now, we're just going to talk about the mechanisms. That's actually probably the easiest one for you, is dealing with the social bonding. And I'm going to hold your hand through the rest of the issues for neuroplasticity. So in summary, we are now going to dive into the actual brain development, but in summary, you now understand the genius of my course. It's just taking your beautiful child and giving them the most excellent opportunity to develop the most efficiently during those critical brain growth periods. So we're harnessing the neuroplasticity, we're minimizing any type of synaptic pruning. And I suppose I should tell you what synaptic pruning is. We have spoken about it before, but just in case you need a refresher, the pruning, just like you would prune a tree, and I have to give a shout out to my book, The Sacred Geometry of Father's Heart. You will see some of my artwork there where the dendrites and actually the neuron itself looks like a tree. So just the way you would prune a tree, for you avid gardeners out there, what the brain automatically does is it prunes the neural pathways that are weak, inefficient, or just aren't being used. And so we are going to take full advantage of boosting the brain development through the synapses and the dendrites to create these nerve cells that are going to fire and wire together, so that synaptic pruning is dismissed almost at the end of these critical growth periods. And I just had to throw this in because I'm such a neuro geek. But it is what they have found out is that GABA is actually really important as a neurotransmitter during the critical brainwave growth stage. And this is why I brought up Dr. Amen and his clinics, because hopefully one of these days we'll start understanding, and we could easily just stick some pads on our child's head and see if the GABA is high or not, to realize if that child has its unique growth period during when the testing of the brain scan is. So, but that's something for the future. And we'll probably have to come back to this in about a decade and go, okay, it's happening. So let's dive in. Are you ready to do this with me? That's been a really big introduction into the brain developmental milestones.